Welcome to the Contractor Counsel Podcast.
Welcome to the Contractor Counsel Podcast with Joshua Irvine of Irvine Legal. Joshua is a Utah business and tax attorney who serves as outside general counsel to construction and trades companies, helping owners manage contracts, collections, liens, and financial systems. I'm Lisa Mosby, and today we're talking about getting paid in construction. Joshua will explain what to do when invoices stall, how to approach collections strategically, and when it makes sense to escalate. Welcome back, Joshua.
Thank you so much for having me.
Joshua, cash flow is the lifeblood of construction companies. From what you see, where does the breakdown usually begin when payments slow down?
Yeah, I think this is the million-dollar question for a lot of companies, especially in construction and trades, because so much of what they do is seasonal, where they do a lot of work and there's a lot of work up front, and then they need payments on the back end in order to maintain, the health and the sustaining of their company. But where I think, when you go back to the root cause of some of these issues on the financial side, it probably comes to one or two common factors. And this could be a company that just started out with one individual, or it could be a company that's over $20 million a year in revenue. It comes back to the same one or two things. Number one is that they don't have good systems around billing. And there are a number of systems they should have in order to make sure that cash flow requests are constant and consistent and accurate. So that's number one. And then number two, similarly though, that they don't have good protections and or follow-up to those requests. And so then it tends to be that it gets delayed and forgotten until it gets almost unruly. And then they have kind of created their own little business financial fire. And they're hoping by calling an attorney, it's going to magically change it the next day. And sometimes that works, but it's not always the case.
So, Joshua, before sending a demand letter or involving an attorney, what internal steps should a contractor take to document and position the issue correctly?
Sure. Yeah. Number one, I would hope that they have some kind of a contract or some kind of a clear agreement of the estimate and proposal, or at least something in writing so that we're not starting behind the eight ball well, I didn't even agree to that kind of work or that kind of expense. So let's assume that part's in place, but I know that's a big assumption, but if it's in place, the next thing is really they have to have a good internal system or a good third party that they've hired to make sure that their bills go out regularly. If you wait, 30 to 60 days to send all of your invoices and you have 30 to 60 days of pay time on your terms, it could be 3 to 4 months before you get your money. So I'm not saying you can't have those terms, but whatever your terms are, make sure you can live with them and that you have somebody on top of and that really owns that responsibility of making sure those invoices are verified and accurate and that they go out on time every time. And then the third part internally is just to make sure that there's some kind of a follow-up or some kind of communication that goes on with their clients. The worst scenario is when the first communication about an unpaid bill comes from an attorney and not from the company or the client themselves, where a lot of times, if that had been their first contact, they might have had a different outcome.
And I'm guessing that at some point, the professional demand letter changes the dynamic and you lose control of conversations or negotiations. What makes one more effective than reactive?
Yeah, and everyone's going to be a little bit different. And this comes more into something I work with clients about is figuring out the culture of their company and kind of how they want to manage those relationships a little bit. But once you involve an attorney, I don't care who the attorney is, and I don't care who the recipient of that kind of a letter is. All of a sudden, the hair on the back of the recipient's neck stands up. Their little prickly spines start poking out, and they dig their heels in, and you start having a little bit of a fight. And my strategy when I work with clients is to try to avoid those fights. A lot of them do not make financial sense for the company. They do not make business sense. They might make legal sense. They might make an attorney a bunch of money, but that's not my approach. And so if you have good communication, good follow up, you can avoid it. But unfortunately, sometimes, even if you have those systems, you have to escalate it because you're not getting a response. And I mean, as silly as it is, every once in a while I get phone calls from clients that are over the moon excited that, oh, this person finally paid me. All it took was for me to have an attorney send exactly the same thing I've sent 4 times. But magically, it's just given more, I don't know about respect, but at least seriousness once it comes on a letterhead from a law firm. Um, and those are just business choices you have to make from time to time.
And I'm sure contractors often worry that pushing too hard will damage relationships. So, how do you evaluate when preserving the relationship makes sense and when leverage might need to be applied?
Yeah, no, we often have this discussion. In fact, one of the situations was recently, it was with a contractor and his relative, um, where he thought he was helping out a family member. And so he was a lot more lax and didn't have the typical contracts and things in place that he should have. And that client, his relative, decided he wasn't going to pay his bill. And and so the conversation literally was exactly this. Hey, what am I supposed to do? And this was fall of this last year. And and my response was simply, well, are you going to be seeing this cousin at Thanksgiving at grandma's house? And he said, well, yeah, probably. And I'm like, well, do you want to have some fireworks at grandma's house? Because if I send this letter, it's going to like make a problem. Like there's no way around it. And he said, no, I've tried. I was patient. I gave him 6 months. It still isn't done. So send a letter. I'm like, okay. Um, and we sent out the letter and he called me laughing and he thought it was hilarious, but his cousin was really upset and he had some nasty words to say, but he paid his bill. Um, and so it's just a matter of that discussion because some relationships are not worth keeping if they are going to put your business at risk. And when I say business, I don't just mean making the owners of companies millions of dollars, because most of the businesses I work with are one or two owners, they're contractors, they're supporting their employees and their families, they're building in the community. So this isn't just about making sure the owners have more money at the end of the day. It's about making sure you can pursue your dreams, build your community, and support your employees. So doing those hard things, having those hard conversations, and making sometimes those choices, is part of why you own a company, whether you knew it or not. That's something you have to do. And yeah, you're 100%. I'm not going to blow smoke. Uh, Pushing on clients is going to strain some relationships, and some of them can work through it, and they're great to continue, and others it needs to be pushed, and those relationships probably have to end, and this just happens to be that final straw.
That's great advice. Oftentimes confrontation is hard in any relationship, whether it's at home or at work or in your business, but it is a necessary, I don't want to use the word evil, but necessary action sometimes that we have to do as business owners. How do payment terms in the original contract either strengthen or weaken a contractor's position during collections?
The the collection process really comes down to, if we're looking at a court case, for example, it comes down to number one, did you have a contract or some kind of a mutual agreement as to what was being provided and how much you were going to pay for it or charge for it? Um, and then and then that's where a lot of the disputes come up, right? But on the payment terms themselves, being clear about, will interest accrue? And I know this sounds self-interested, but will attorney's fees be added to this dispute or not? Those are two of the most important parts of collection leverage, is what I'll call it. Because if the other side only owes you, a few $100s or even a few $1,000, it might be more expensive to chase them than it's worth, unless you have some of those terms in there, those teeth, in that agreement that you can enforce if necessary. So, yeah, I don't want you to have to go to court. It's usually the last resort in my mind. But if you have to go there, I want you to be able to be reimbursed for the expenses and costs of you having to go down that road. If you don't have those in your terms, then you're not. I mean, you're going to be losing more money on this. You're not going to be able to get it back later a lot of times. So the other thing to keep in mind with contractors, and this is independent no matter what state you're in, every state has different rules, but there are procedures that contractors have separate from contracts to make sure that they have good payment terms, but also that they can potentially use construction liens and similar tools to enforce the amounts they're supposed to be getting paid on these jobs.
And it makes me think that there might be other mistakes. What other mistakes do construction companies make that unintentionally reduce their ability to recover what they're owed?
Well, we've talked about change orders before. One example is exactly that, not being clear about the scope of work and when it changes, not being clear about what you can bill for. A lot of times, just clients not understanding how invoices are going to be sent and when. And so a lot of times a company will say, "Oh, well, I'll just write off that part," or "I forgot to bill you for that, and so let's just forget about it. Let's walk away." I know it sounds like you're probably giving good customer service, and maybe you are, but you're also putting your business at risk because you just didn't have a system in place to document some of the things and to fully get paid for the work you do. I, I mean, not to pick on, I guess we'll just pick on lawyers for a second here because we all have our jokes and I tell them too. But, you know, attorneys usually don't work for free. And when they send you a bill, it's super itemized with whatever they did if they do that kind of hourly billing stuff. I personally don't, but in the traditional model, that's what you get. And I just don't know why sometimes contractors don't do the same thing. Bill for everything you do, be clear about everything you're doing for the client. And then if you want to give them a discount because that's something that you personally choose to offer and give, great, do that. Give back and it'll feel great. But don't give away your service for free because you were too lazy or stubborn to put in place systems and structures.
And homeowners don't always know what goes into it or what's all involved. So, being a good communicator and itemizing and sharing that information, they realize the value and they see where the dollars are going. So, sometimes that can help with that communication process, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely.
When a contractor is dealing with repeated late payments from the same client, how should they go about adjusting the contract or getting more deposits or structuring the project going forward?
I mean, this is a fun little chicken and the egg dynamic. Is it a problem with the payment terms? Is it a problem with your teams that are doing the work? Is it a problem with choosing the wrong kind of clients to work for? Is it all of the above, or is it something completely different? I think this kind of a question really just starts to reveal sometimes the business skills of the company owners themselves. And there might not be one solution that's going to always solve that situation. But I would hope every contractor, every business owner that's out there, that they are spending time with people kind of as their advisors, people that they trust, people that have experience in the industry, that can actually walk through three or four of these kind of potential scenarios. And then they can test them out and they can try them out and to see, how do we do this? Is it just a matter of firing that client and not doing any more work? Or are there other systems and tools that we are either not using or not following or that we need to create, so that we don't run into this constant problem with cash flow and invoices being unpaid?
And my last question for today is, if you were to wrap this all up and give us a summation, what would you like our audience to take away from today?
You know, as business owners, you have to ultimately take responsibility. It has to fall squarely on your shoulders. We've talked a little bit about systems and how we could potentially avoid some of the cash flow issues. But as a business owner, number one, you probably didn't go to business school. And that's neither good nor bad. I don't know that it is going to change your world either way. But you're probably really good at your trade, which is why you're in this particular industry. And if you don't have a lot of good business background, then you need to make sure that you have somebody that can be there as an advisor, as a not a partner in a legal sense, but somebody that you can trust, that you can really just kind of explore some of these kind of business realities with, and you just have to take that responsibility. That one of the books that we read in my company is called Extreme Ownership, and frankly, any of you listening, if you want a copy of it, just reach out and I'll shoot you a free copy, because I think it's that important. This is a culture that we embrace in our firm, and I think you as owners need to embrace personally, i- as an individual, if not for your whole company. But you, at the end of the day, have to take ownership that these decisions, these paths, the outcomes of your company don't happen by accident. They happen by you taking ownership or failing to do so. So, so take it, and let's create that cool future that you've all been working towards.
And maybe we need to have an episode on just that book because I know it's something I'd like to know a little bit more about.
Yeah, baby.
Joshua, thank you so much for your insights again today. And that's it for today's episode of the Contractor Counsel Podcast. If you're a construction or trades business owner in Utah dealing with slow payments or looking to strengthen your collections process, you can learn more about Joshua and Irvine Law at irvine-legal.com. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe to the show, and leave a review if you found this episode helpful. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.